So from an Indiana perspective, I'm not sure how familiar you are with their non-conference schedule, but they've put a lot of eggs in the battle for Atlantis basket. They've scheduled, I think, 8 home games outside of this. The only high major team they're going to play is South Carolina at home, which we don't know. South Carolina was an NCAA tournament team this year, and I don't think the expectation is for them to be as good this year with what they lost in the offseason. So this is really an important game on the non-conference schedule for Indiana because if they can win this game, they obviously would set themselves up to get a chance at Gonzaga and potentially Arizona. If they lose this game, all of a sudden you're looking at a scenario where maybe you don't even play an NCAA tournament team in the non-conference, which is not something you want to do when you're looking to build a resume. So from a Louisville perspective, how important is this event in terms of how it fits into their non-conference schedule? What else kind of are they going to do in the non-conference, and how important, I guess, is this game and this event for them?
Well, Louisville will have played Louisville's second game of the season. Second real game of the season is against Tennessee. Actually, they played a little tournament before that, so they'll have a couple games under their belt. But so they will have played. I don't know what we know. Tennessee was good last year. I'm not sure. Again, it's kind of like South Carolina. I'm not sure how good they're supposed to be, but that's a decent test for them at home. But Louisville has other non-conference tests. I mean, and in fact probably more than they would like to have, given what they have coming off of that. They will play Ole Miss. They play Kentucky every year, so they've got that. So they've got a few games, not a lot. This is also going to be a pretty important stretch for them. But I would, from the standpoint of where Louisville's been and where it's coming from, there's not a ton of pressure on this team, I would think. I mean, people are going to be happy if they can just hold their own in some of these games. But again, from what I've said, from what we've seen, if Indiana can win the game, it stands a chance to be a quality win at the end of the season. It certainly opens the door for Indiana to get better opponents over the next couple of days down there in the Bahamas.
Looking at this roster, you mentioned Kelsey really focused on targeting guys in the transfer portal that have won and that are old. I mean, you look at kind of the ages of some of these players. I don't think they're really going to have all that many players returning from this roster the
No,
next season. So it's going to kind of be another rebuild after year one. But it also seems like he's put this together with the mindset of we're going to go try to make the tournament in year one. We're not going to try to waste any time and get this thing back on the upswing. And the Athletic has already picked Louisville to finish third in the ACC, which would be quite a turnaround coming from a 3-17 season. But when you look at this roster and who they brought in, who are in your mind some of the key cogs in terms of who's going to maybe be the go-to scorer? We obviously know the name Chucky Hepburn from an Indiana perspective because he's been on those Wisconsin teams that always give Indiana a ton of problems. So he'll be familiar playing against Indiana. But who are some of these other names to know from the Louisville roster?
well, there is a guy that did a lot of scoring down the Bahamas in their first trip was Corin Johnson, just a guy who can has a nose for the basket and can score points. But you've got guys who can score. Noah Waterman came in from BYU as a big kid who can shoot, 6'11" kid who can shoot. Should be a pretty good player for them. You mentioned Chucky Hepburn. I would throw out there a guy like Terrence Edwards Jr., who came from James Madison. He was a Sun Belt Player of the Year last year. He didn't have a great offensive tournament down in the Bahamas, but they put a lot of points up and they shot the ball really well. One of the things in the Athletic article that you mentioned was just three-point shooting. They return about 1,000 more made three-pointers than any other team in the ACC, and they shot and made a bunch. I think they had 18, averaged 18 in games down there against token defense, I think we have to say, in watching it. But there were times last year where Louisville did make 18 threes in the warm-ups. So fans are excited when they watch that kind of thing. Other guys to watch is Javon Hadley. He was a good scorer down there. He's a 6'6" swing man. They have decent size. And Rain Smith, who played for Pat Kelsey at Charleston, didn't have a good shooting tournament, but is what he expects to be the best three-point shooter on the team. Cason Pryor is 6'10". Again, Louisville's got a lot of these 6'10" guys who can shoot and get out on the court. They don't have a lot of bulk. They don't have anybody that's that's going to be a question in a game against Indiana, is who can stop some of the interior game that Indiana's going to have going on. But they have good size. Kanai Boost is a freshman, and he was a 4 or 5 star freshman coming in, and he played extremely well down in the Bahamas, which I think was something they weren't looking for. Kelsey brought a 6'10" guy with him from Charleston who he expects is going to play a good bit and is a pretty good player. So they just have a lot of guys. There's no one guy right now that you can say here's their go-to guy, here's their end of the shot clock guy. They don't have that, and maybe that'll be a problem for them. I don't know, but they got a lot of guys who scored a lot of points. And one thing that we saw from the Bahamas is that they don't mind passing the basketball. They had 27 assists in their first game down there, so they don't mind to move the ball around and look for each other. And if they keep that up, they're going to be a tough team for people to play.